Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Rabid Dog's House, where we like to discuss lost or forgotten horror gems with a little bit of bite. I'm your host, Justin Steele, and tonight we are going to discuss 1995's Copycat, directed by Jon Amiel and starring Sigourney Weaver, Holly Hunter, Dermot Mulroney, William McNamara, and Harry Connick Jr. Helen Hudson is a specialist on serial killers. However, after an encounter with her own serial killer superfan, she becomes agoraphobic and shies away from both the outside world and her work. After a new serial killer begins his own bloody massacre, police inspectors MJ and Reuben reach out to Helen for her expertise. The trio soon finds out that Helen is now being targeted from this new madman that happens to enjoy copycatting other infamous serial killers from the past. Copycat is for the horror fan that enjoys 90s psychological thrillers and solid performances with a little bit of serial killer true crime history thrown in. Also joining me tonight is my fabulous co-host, Zena Dixon. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Rabid Dog's House. Thank you, Zena Dixon, the real queen of horror, for joining me tonight. How you doing, Zena?
I'm doing well, Justin. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing very well. Really looking forward to this episode. We are doing Copycat. Now, this is a movie that I have been watching since I was probably about 12 years old, 13 years old. I remember probably, I have to think the first time I saw it was renting it from the video store. It just was a new release, so that means I was super young. But I was like, oh, this looks cool. And usually my mom or dad would let me get one like thriller type movie. And I loved it then. I don't think I appreciated it when I was 12 or 13, but as I've gotten older, it is a movie I have watched countless times. I mean, Sigourney Weaver, who is at the top of my list of actresses, Holly Hunter, who I adore in everything that I see. She is always fantastic. And I'm sure I'll butcher his name here and there, but Dermot Mulroney is great. William McNamara is in it, who was in Dario Argento's opera. He was the guy that the main character was sort of Betty was like having a little fling with. And I just and I you know what, he looks so young in that, or he looks so young in this, that I was shocked that he had been in that movie like 8 years before. But I just think that there's a lot to really love about this movie. Hands down, it's the performances, but I also think that it's like this great thriller, psychological thriller, which you and I, we've talked about a few psychological thrillers on here. It's been a minute, so I'm glad we're kind of getting to talk about one, because I love 90s thrillers. I love the feeling of them, the atmosphere, and especially when they have a nice, interesting hook. And I think this one's great. It's definitely, paying homage to an 80s slasher with the sort of like, who's it going to be? How's this all going to play out? But it clearly has that, like, we're trying to be a little bit above 80s slashers, but really when you break it down, that's what it is. Although I love that you kind of, again, spoilers, as always. I like that you get to see who the killer is. Like about halfway through, they finally like give you that, and it's really cool. I don't know if you got a chance to rewatch it, but if you go back and watch it, you see him throughout the film. He's in the class at the beginning of the movie. He's at the police station because they make a reference like the criminal might be watching. Well, if you when you rewatch the film, there's so much to find again that you might not have caught the first time because he was watching. And anyway, I just think there's so much, and we'll get into it. But I know that you said you've started to watch this before, but I think this was your first time really getting to watch Copycat, which is stunning to me, because I can't believe that you haven't seen this. And I think it's great that it's relevant to this show, that we're trying to talk about movies that may have gotten lost or forgotten along the way. So I think it's cool that this is one for you that I think you may have enjoyed that got lost or forgotten about the way. So tell me, you go ahead. What did you think about Copycat?
Okay, well, first, I loved it. We're gonna, get that out in the open. So, kind of like what you said, I'm surprised that I haven't seen this one as well, because it has everything that I love. First off, you have these two awesome women who's like trying to find like a serial killer, and they're smart. They flow together. They get along. You like them. You know what I mean? They're no damsel in distress. in distress. And then on top of that, like you said, again, it's, I feel like I'm going to be repeating you, but it is like a 90s thriller that has that feel. And I like that it's like very gritty, you know, because it is about a serial killer, but at the same time, it's still very polished. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, but when you really think about it, it is a little bit disturbing because as a viewer, we're able to go into the mind of a serial killer. And there's just like some dark stuff that was like happening. And I know for sure if I would have watched this movie as a kid, I would have loved it because I remember at one point, I don't know what was wrong with me. I was a weird kid, 8, 9 years old. I was really into serial killers. And I actually, and I actually wanted to be kind of similar to Helen Hudson. Like I wanted to be studying them. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. What if someone would try to kill me? You know, that's why I changed. That's the only reason why I changed my mind, you know, in life. And I was like, yeah, no, it's not for me. But I loved it. I feel like, okay, it's so weird that you don't hear too much about this movie, but you always hear about Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
You know, and I'm not putting down that movie, but I will say I kind of prefer watching Copycat now because Silence of the Lambs, it's an awesome movie, but I'm so sorry, you know, because I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but I do think there's just something about Copycat that just pulls me in more. Like it feels so tense and it has like a terrifying atmosphere, even though it is a thriller. Now, I'm not saying I was scared, but when you think about it again, we're in the mind of a serial killer. And he's that crazy where he's copying off of other serial killers. And the fact that, no, who would suspect him? You know, when we find out who he is, he just looked like a regular guy. And then, like, first off, too, I know we're going to get into it, but even the opening alone, I feel like if you're someone who loves thrillers, if you love, you know, maybe this is just like jumping ahead, love like terrifying atmospheres, or if you're someone where it's just like you don't like horror, but you kind of want to be a little bit disturbed, this is a perfect movie for you. And, you know, I know like with you and I, we both watch like a lot of horror movies, but the fact that I'm even saying that there's just something that just made me feel uneasy while watching it, I just had like a blast with it. And I feel like the way it was shot was amazing. I love the pacing of it. In some ways, there are some stuff that is a little bit predictable, you know, but at the same time, you accept it because it's the 90s. You know what I mean? And there's so much stuff that came out after that and stuff. But again, just going back to like Silence of the Lambs, it's just crazy to me that people always mention that movie, but you don't really hear too much about this one.
For sure.
Or even Seven, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say yes. I was gonna say Seven is the other one that you kind of hear of from that time frame.
Yeah. So, but no, I love it. Like, it's crazy. I know for sure if I would have watched this as a kid, like back in the 90s, I would have loved it. So, thank you so much. Like, I feel like it's just been great.
I'm really glad. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I had a strong feeling that you were going to enjoy this movie, especially now that I know you a bit better now. And I'm like, 90s thriller about serial killers, strong performances.
Yes.
Like, I'm always a fan, too, of like movies that are about people that are experts at their field. And I really like that you have the Helen Hudson character, but as well as Holly Hunter, who are both these women that know their job. They're flawed, thus making them more relatable and human, but they are the best at what they do. But yes, I think you're right. I think Seven and Silence of the Lambs definitely get a little bit more recognition than Copycat. And I adore Copycat. I love Silence of the Lambs. I love Seven. I think, though, Copycat was the first time for me that I really got to realize that a serial killer could be this sort of likable, handsome looking guy as opposed to like the creepy factor of Buffalo Bill, the put the lotion in the basket, you know, like this guy seemed like that's what made it creepy. And really that's how a lot of serial killers of the most variety serial killers were sort of charismatic, handsome guys. And so I think like that was the first time I had any insight onto serial killers that I feel like I learned more in Copycat than I did in Silence of the Lambs or even Seven.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And just to even piggyback on what you said with the serial killer, I think for me, it was the first time that I saw like a serial killer who just looked like a regular guy.
Yeah,
You
just
know?
normal guy next door.
So it's just like, and then again, like I don't know. I'm just really disappointed in myself for not watching it. But it's like, and we were talking off air about this, but I think it used to be on Tubi. Maybe it was like last year because I remember the poster, and I especially remember the opening.
Yeah.
And then I don't know why I didn't finish it, but I know that I didn't because I didn't like I don't remember anything else. While I was watching it, I didn't remember anything else like after it. You know.
Well, I like too that it sort of gives you, as opposed to maybe Silence of the Lambs or Seven or any of those other movies at the time, it does sort of highlight real life crimes and gets to show you a little bit more insight of some Son of Sam or Jeffrey Dahmer or Peter Curtin, the Boston Strangler, all of those. So you actually get sort of these highlights of these serial killers, which could then pique one's interest as a viewer into researching a little bit more about serial killers. Again, as tense and as exciting as this movie is, I don't think that there was anything hugely inappropriate to see for somebody of like 12 or 13. So I think it would be a solid movie. And we say this a lot on the show, but that would be a good introductory movie for younger horror audiences. There's not a lot of like oversexed scenes or anything like that. There's some violence, a little bit of gore, but nothing like making you feel sick or like, oh, I shouldn't let a kid see this. But I do like that. I like the highlights of it, and also, yes, that opening scene, Harry Connick Jr. He went on to become this sort of jazz singer, or I think of him in Hope Floats, where he's the romantic lead. But when you see him in this role, he is so creepy and effectively so, believably so. And what he does to Helen, you can believe that she then became this agoraphobic woman who, I love the concept of like, it's almost a little Hitchcockian, like it's
Yes.
with homages to like Vertigo or Rare Window, where she's stuck in a house in a
Yeah.
situation due to something that she can't really overcome. And I
Hmm.
think that's a really cool genesis of an idea, that they had this genesis kernel of an idea that they really did right by getting Sigourney Weaver, who's amazing, and I'm sure we'll get into all that. But yeah, so what were some of your other favorite moments from it? I mean, you obviously enjoyed the opening. What'd you think of Harry Connick Jr. in it?
Okay. I was so surprised that he's the guy from Hope's Float,
Right,
because
right.
he was just like he was such a sweetie pie, and we was like, oh, look at him helping her in life, and he always just liked her. But
Yeah.
then you see him here, and he is creepy, like so. It's just like that's the kind of guy that I was just okay, yeah, he's totally a serial killer. But then in a way, it's just kind of like he's just like this really big fan of hers.
Right.
And it's just but it's creepy though, you know what I mean? Like just settle down. Like it's not so much of how he looks, it's clearly what he does, what he did.
Yeah.
And then even at the end when he was writing on a letter, like that whole letter and saying that he's gonna own her panties, and it's just like, no.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, but besides from the opening, so I really like the character, Reuben. I love the fact that where at first it's like, okay, he kind of seems like he has a thing for Holly Hunter's character, MJ. But
Yeah.
then when he meets Helen, and when he's even talking to MJ, he's like, oh, I think she's kind of sweet. You know what I mean? And it's just like they're exchanging eyes. So it's like, oh, they're going to be booze. But then, spoiler,
Yeah.
he dies. I was so, Justin, no. Why did you do this to me?
I'm sorry.
I was so hurt. Like, I don't understand because I really liked his character. He just seemed like a really good guy. He wasn't trying to take advantage of anyone. He was really into his job, and it's
Yeah.
just like, why?
Well,
But
I'll
I,
say, first, imagine watching. See, I watched this before I watched Hope Floats. So when I saw Harry Connick Jr. in Hope Floats, I had this preconceived notion. So it took me a minute to get used to Justin McTease. But then, yes, with this character now, I rewatched this in preparation with my mom because she has never seen it. And I was like, oh, perfect. We have a movie night every week. I'm like, let's watch this because I got to watch it this week anyway. Now, she had the same reaction about Reuben, Dermot Mulroney's character, and that I think that bodes well for how strong the performance was, the setup that you are kind of emotionally devastated about it. And I hate to say he's sort of it's sort of used to illustrate a devastation for Holly Hunter, because the whole thing they talked about when you first meet these two characters are how you have to shoot in the arm, and that's going to, that's the right thing to do according to Holly Hunter. And I would agree with that too. Like, why kill somebody if you don't have to?
Right.
Unfortunately, in this situation, because she chose to do what I would have also considered the right
Yeah.
thing to do, it was disastrous. And it also, it illustrates, in my opinion, the both of these women come to a place where, Helen knew her job very well and almost to an egotistical way,
Hmm.
which in her excessive pride, her hubris or ubri, everybody says hubris. It's technically ubri. It's a personal thing. But anyway, her hubris became her downfall and led to this agoraphobic life. Holly Hunter also had her hubris that, like, this is what you do. She's like telling Reuben, and boy, it hurts Reuben and her. And then so they have this sort of baggage to overcome. But yes, no, when I watched it with my mom, she was also devastated by she was like, what? She didn't see it coming.
Right. I didn't see that coming at all. But then in a way, even though it happened, I see why it happened
Yeah.
and the importance of it happening, because again, you have these two strong women working together. And I think that if Reuben was still there, he probably would have most likely saved the day,
Right. Right.
so it's understandable. But yeah, just because that little piece in there, and then the fact that I didn't like that he died, but you affected me like that, you
Yeah.
already have me sold. Like you said, with the performances, it's on point. Like the leads, like the setup, the build up after it happened, and you felt bad. Like I felt horrible for MJ because, like you said, she tried to do the right thing, and like you, I would have did that too. Because imagine if she would have just shot the guy in his head, that would have been horrible. That would have been, she probably would have got suspended, or but yeah, she would still have Reuben, but
Right.
so it's just like I get like the setup of it, but I love the fact that they have these two women at the forefront going after this guy, like they're like a step ahead of him, like they're waiting.
I like to say too, it was a tragedy all around, because even that kid who was holding Reuben sort of hostage, even he was like stunned by what he just did. He was scared. He was like an animal trapped in a corner. And I just wanted to say that's how well crafted this movie is. That he's almost becoming like a stereotypical mafia looking kid, but then you find out, oh no, he's even like, I didn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely, let's talk about these two women. I mean, you have Sigourney Weaver and Holly Hunter. I love the dynamic that they don't really like each other, but
Yeah.
they respect each other. And they have this sort of playful banter, which also, until we lose Dermot Mulroney, he's involved in too, and in some ways almost a pawn between them.
Mhm.
But I love that she's basically like, I'm not working for you. Or if you're working for us, you need to do this. I'm not working for you. This sort of like back and forth. But like you see this respect between them. And I think that's in the script, probably the characters themselves, but also because of these two performances. But
Right.
overall, what do you think? I definitely want to speak more about that, but just what do you think of the two characters of Helen and MJ, as well as Sigourney Weaver and Holly Hunter?
Okay, first with the actresses themselves, they're amazing. They're always amazing in everything that they do. That's
So
what I
true, though. I mean, it's so true, Zena.
It is like it's crazy. So I knew that the performances, like without even watching it, just seeing like the names on the cover, I knew that it was going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then even as far as it goes with Dermot, with him as well, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, but with him as well, I really like him. I think that he's a great actor, and I love seeing him on screen. Like he has like, he's very charming. So as far as it goes with the characters, I'm not gonna lie, okay, well first with Helen, I loved Helen. I feel like she's just such a great, powerful woman. Even though what happened to her and she just wanted to stay in her apartment, I totally get it. You know what I mean? To be honest with you, if that were me, I would probably feel the same way. I don't even want to go out there anymore. you know,
Right,
but
right. I get it.
obviously you can't do that in life. You can't just sit in a little safe bubble, or a place that you think is a little safe bubble. But When it comes to MJ, at first I didn't care for her. You know what I mean? She just seemed like a know-it-all. It's so weird. It's like, I thought that Reuben had a crush on her, and it's like it seemed like she had a crush on him. And I know they're partners, but it's just like you're just messing with him, But then it seems like when he has interest in someone else, now you want to have interest in him. You know what I mean? So then it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, but then she was kind of being snippy. But then I feel like it works. It's a good balance. Like I feel like she's not the same like Helen. And sometimes with a lot of movies, you know what I mean? We see the same kind of character. I haven't really seen, I've seen a character like her, but I've seen it more in a male form. So I love the fact that, with MJ's character, she's very dominant. She's very dominant. She's very much in control. And even what she said, just going back to Reuben with Reuben's death, when she was talking about it, she said she tried to control the situation.
Yeah.
And honestly, she did the right thing. It doesn't matter that she's a woman. She did the right thing. It's just unfortunate because no one knew that was going to happen,
Right.
So, but yeah, overall, I just feel like they just have such a great balance together. And I like the fact that there's different characters, but there's some familiar characters that we've seen before in other movies, but then there's also some new characters, So I don't know. It just feels like the situation, the characters, the build up, the pacing, just how terrifying it is. It felt real. And to me, that's important. And I'm not saying, like, I keep on bringing up Silence of the Lambs. I'm not saying it didn't feel real, but kind of like what you said with Buffalo Bill, it's just kind of like, yeah, I would stay away from someone like that.
Right. Yeah.
Just seeing, like with this serial killer, he was at the club. So, but no, I think that women would like him. I think that women, men, people, he just seems very much approachable. So it just seemed very much realistic.
But I could not agree more with what you're saying, like especially about the realness of these two women. I think it would have been, now you said you've seen it more in a like when it's male dominated, and I have too, several thousand times. But I have also seen it where you do, if you have more than like one strong female in a movie, they're almost the same performance, like the same kind of strength, the same kind of thing. And I really love that these two women had different strengths, but were very strong. They had different flaws, but they were their flaws.
Yes.
They both, generated from a sense of hubris, but also because of MJ's relationship with Reuben, her versus Helen's, relationship with Reuben, it created these sort of conflicts that were individualized to each of these women instead of just like Helen was strong in the exact same way that MJ was strong. And that's how these two women played it. I felt like I could have watched a TV series about these two women.
Oh
I
my
could
gosh, yes.
them to come together a lot of times. But in general, I just think like like you said, anything these two women are in, Sigourney Weaver, Holly Hunter, I have loved Home for the Holidays, always with Holly Hunter. I am a big, big fan of the Alien movies. I wasn't though at the time. I think I saw. It's possible I knew of the Alien movies when I know I did it when I was like 11 or 12, but I never really watched them. But this is what kind of, I'm pretty sure it was this film, and I'm sure a little bit of like Dana from Ghostbusters. But this, I think, was the film that made me start to become a fan of Sigourney Weaver. So then when I went to watch Alien, I always had Helen in the back of my mind. So I was automatically rooting for Ellen Ripley.
Yeah.
Ellen. Oh, I just realized that. I'm like, wait, am I saying that right? Yes. So that's what made me kind of love Ellen Ripley right off the bat, was because of Helen. And so, yes, I just love that performance. But I feel like, yes, MJ comes off unlikable initially because of that know-it-all attitude. But then I think it dissolves into it's her charm. It's a sort of charming quality. But I then want to, was there anything else you want to kind of discuss about the two women or anything else
In general, just anything.
in general?
Okay. Well, I actually wanted to get your opinion about like the serial killer. So with what he was doing to Helen, like with the suit on the bed and like that particular suit that she was wearing in the beginning in the opening. But then also with the ants in her bed. And like she, the thing with that happened with the suit, I just thought maybe I knew it was somebody messing around with her, but it's like that can easily be brushed off. But then the thing with the ants, because she looked like she really wanted to relax for the rest of the night. Can you imagine? You know,
Right.
you're lying down, and then these ants, and then you look under your mattress, and there's a book with a finger, someone's
No.
finger,
No.
like so. And I'm really surprised that they haven't. Well, okay. Well, I just want to get your opinion on that first.
Well, first of all, if I see like one ant, I'm like, oh, already. So to see a whole bunch is too much. But I think I'm glad you asked that question for a lot of reasons because I do think it's a good transition from Helen over to the serial killer because that those scenes in particular emphasize not only Helen has this sort of agoraphobic issue,
Mm-hmm.
she's clearly like suffering, like she's doing anything she can to not suffer by drinking, taking
Mm-hmm.
pills, really getting out there. And it's supposed to be on the surface, is she seeing this, is this really happening? And obviously as she becomes more involved in the case, she starts to clear up. She starts to become her own self again, still struggling. But I think it's an interesting thing how she got to that place. So when you get to the dress, the ants, I think it's this interesting dynamic of the serial killer's playing with her. And again, I think William McNamara did this fantastic job. And his character is Peter. He's like Harry Connick Jr. attacks Helen at the beginning of the movie, and the whole rest of the movie, he was obsessed with her from before because he felt betrayed by her anyway because she testified. So now he's got this guy, Peter, who's been writing to him, and he's trying to get Peter to like play this attack on Helen. Like it's like the serial killer wants to create his own thing in this sort of postmodern sort of take on serial killers. Like they're not supposed to deviate from their MOs. This guy does at all. And so he's now taking on all these things, but at the same time, it's this game with Helen. And I love too with Helen too how you have her like playing like in the internet, like she's got like a chess game going. Now you have to understand when I was a kid watching this, I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I'm like, oh, you could play this on the web, you could play chess, you could play games, have these chat rooms. I was just starting to become aware of that, so I thought that was super cool. But anyway, but I think that then the killer, he clearly has his own vulnerabilities, but he enjoys the kill as well as the messing with Helen kills or messing with Helen leading up to what he thinks is going to be this kill for Harry Connick Jr.'s character. And that's what I think. We'll get into this, but at the very, very, very end, the creepiest thing I think about the movie is how Harry Connick Jr. is still writing. He's now get like Peter's one follower. He's going to get another follower to go after Helen. This isn't over. And he's basically like, Peter got too complicated. You need to just go right for it,
Mm-hmm.
implying just go and get her. And Peter, it's this sort of elaborate game. It's part of the complexities of it, leading ultimately to this grand finale. But I do think that the character of Peter, again, he's so likable and like, oh, he's not likable, but he's relatable.
Right.
You would think he's like this charming guy next door. I think though the most devastating of all the kills that he does, and there's a few upsetting ones, a few stressful ones, is Andy, Sigourney Weaver's gay best friend slash assistant,
Mm-hmm.
that he thinks he's going out for this night of fun and parties. And I think he gets the most gruesome of
Yeah.
all but they're all pretty, I mean, it's apples and oranges, these deaths. How do you determine?
Yeah.
But that's a pretty horrific one. But
Right.
what do you think about like, again, if I saw those ants, I'd freak out, finger freak out. But again, I think it was part of his pleasure. And I think it leads to
Mm-hmm.
some of the most interesting images of how Sigourney Weaver's character handles the
Right.
situation.
I agree with you. It was definitely a part of his pleasure. You know what I mean? He was just getting so much from it. But with her, I was a little bit surprised that she was so horrified. I know I would be, oh my God, it's a finger, but the stuff that's been happening to her, the stuff that she's been seeing, I'm surprised that they didn't even have, someone with her the entire time.
Yeah.
So maybe like just 3 police officers, three or 4. And I know that's like a lot, but you need to protect her or put her in a very protective place, So I just thought that was a little bit weird, but I don't know. It's that's what makes it again, you at the edge of your seat, because you as the viewer, you're sitting here, you're watching this stuff, and then you can't help to think, obviously two things. What would you do if you were in that situation? The second thing, I couldn't help but think about how this is us in the mind of a serial killer.
Right, exactly.
So it's just like there's going to be a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense, like, okay, well, why would he do that? You know what I mean? So, but I don't know. It sounds gruesome. This sounds a little bit off. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it, like where it was going, and then even just, again, seeing Helen's reaction. And, she was probably just feeling the same way. Again, she probably felt safe in her safe bubble,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I liked that. One of my favorite Dermot Mulroney moments is because they did at one point have a security guard outside of Helen's
Yeah.
door who then went off to answer an alarm. And I love that Dermot Mulroney was like, I will deal with you later. Like, why would you leave? Like, that's such an
Yeah.
obvious thing to do. But obviously, it allows us to have that moment. But I also like that later on, it seems like they maybe try to add another police officer in, but then that's how he ends up getting in, which I thought was clever, like making it look like they're through the keyhole talking. As far as Peter goes, again, I think that he's clearly a fan of serial killers and all like doing their MOs. We don't really get to learn too much about Harry Connick Jr. as a serial killer. We hear little tidbits, but I have to think, obviously Peter is a fan of serial killers. This Harry Connick Jr. is a live serial killer. What's his name in it? I probably shouldn't be calling him Harry Connick Jr. Daryl Lee Cullum. Yeah, Peter is a fan of Daryl Lee Cullum, so maybe it was a little bit of Daryl Lee Cullum's MO to sort of do these sort of bizarre insect involving finger things. But he did say, I think, and I never really remember this part, but he did say something like Peter was supposed to deliver this in another way, but Peter did kind of deviate a little bit. But yeah, overall, I still think it's effective and interesting, and I love that it leads ultimately to this ending. And I love a good full circle, and we come back full circle at the end, and it's not just like arbitrary. Like it's the whole movie's been designed, and it's still in line with the rest of it because, of course, Peter would try to recreate what Daryl Lee Cullum tried to do at the beginning. And the thing that I knew I would love this movie forever is when Sigourney Weaver is the most helpless in that situation as she was at the beginning, just as much as she was at the end, but she chooses to like mess up the image that Peter is trying to do because he wants to kill her in a specific way, and she's still having no way to fight back, still manages to fight back by just trying to kill herself, which then allows everything to break free. But it's also just as much for Holly Hunter. She's already messed up bad prior to this. So the fact is she's going in this against daughters. She cannot mess up this time. And she almost kind of does, but still both of them in the end triumph. But what did you end up thinking ultimately about that ending?
Okay. Love the ending. Love that it was like a full circle back around. And then even when it comes to like with the serial killer, I keep on calling him serial killer because I forget his name.
Peter.
Thank you.
I forgot too until I said Peter Curtin, and then I'm like, it's Peter, go.
But even with Peter, it's just kind of like, okay, he's just so particular. You know what I mean? He has to have things a certain way. And that was so smart of Helen to like kind of literally think on her toes to mess up his image, and then that completely derailed his whole plan. And then even as far as it goes with MJ, to be honest with you, she had to like not listen. She had to break the rules this time. Otherwise, like Helen would have been dead.
Yeah.
She would never made it. So obviously she came prepared. She came with her bulletproof vest and everything, and she knew what was going to happen. But I'm so happy that she did. And it's like, I don't want to say it was like a happy ending. Kind of, we have our two women who are heroes, but it was just like, how is both of them going to be able to get through something like this? Because look at what happened with Helen before, and then with MJ, it's just like, okay, she lost Reuben, and he was a friend, a potential love interest, her partner. So it's just kind of like, and then it's just like on top of that, not saying that her job would punish her, but I don't know. She just seemed like she was always at the top of her game in the beginning of the movie. And obviously, when something happened to Reuben and she completely broke down, I love the fact that she did. And not having her trying to be strong. It's just like, that's understandable. Like, I felt those tears, like, you know what I mean? So I loved seeing that. But then towards the end, because like you said, she knew that this time she wasn't going to follow the rules. And like you said, she couldn't mess up this time. There was no room for like any kind of mistakes. So I just love the fact that this movie is just like this terrifying journey until like the very last bit. Because with Peter, you know, when Helen, you know, she somehow escapes, she stabs him with a mirror. She's trying to grab onto a scalpel in the bathroom. She manages to run down the hall and run through the stairway where she makes it to the roof. And, you know, Peter's there. He's, you know, once again, going to try to do crazy things. And then we have MJ who shoots him. And she shot him so many times. And it was just like, each time it was just like, okay, go down. It wasn't until he was shot in his head where I felt safe. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it was just like he was really just revving up. He was really just still trying to, you know what I mean? Go after them. Like, he was just so set on his plan. And even what he was saying to Helen before MJ got there, just like how she's going to be a famous victim. And it's just like, what? Like, you are thinking about yourself. You want to be famous in your own twisted way. So, but again, that is the mind of a serial killer. And even how you mentioned Hitchcock, I think that, you know, people who love Hitchcock movies, you definitely need to check this one out.
Heck yeah. Did it get you like, it got me, I think, the first time I saw it, and it definitely got my mom. When he's in the bathroom and switches places with the police officer, because I think we're so used to seeing it. Did it get you when he was like, the head turns and you're like, oh
yeah, because it was just kind of like, at this point, Helen, you know what I mean? So it's just, you don't know what's going to happen. But see, that's the kind of movies, that's how I really love my thriller movies. You know what I mean? I want to be thrilled, as the genre states, you know? The
roller coaster of it, the sort of like, oh, another twist. I think that as far as Helen and MJ go, I think it does sort of imply, for my interpretation of it, that they are going to be okay this time around, because you're right, the first time it was bad. And I think that for MJ, if that what had happened to Reuben had happened, and then she didn't get this sort of redemption, then she would not be okay. But because these two different women came together in the end to defeat him, I think that they are going to be okay now. I think that because this time they didn't go through it alone. It wasn't their hubris got in the way. This time they knew, this guy might be better than me. This guy might be smarter than me. I've got to just do the best I can. And this time they would triumph through it because of that, because it was based on just instinct and going with it, instead of like, the rest of the movie, they had to use their intelligence to figure it out. But when it came down to it, they needed to trust themselves. And I think that's a really powerful message, an interesting message. And I think, that helps make it a great movie. Again, you have Daryl Lee Cullum at the very end, who's still probably going to be going after Helen. So who knows, it leaves you with that chill. But I'd like to think that she's better prepared. And with so is MJ from a different angle. But overall, I just think the ending is effective. I think that, the whole movie, there's so much to enjoy. There's so many thrills. It plays on a lot of different senses, because it's intelligent, but it's got great performances that you're not going to forget. And I just think there's lots to enjoy. But was there anything else, Zena, you wanted to mention, or any final thoughts about Copycat?
Do not be like me. If you have not seen this movie, you need to watch it. I'm so happy that I own it. Like, since I had it, I already watched it twice, so I didn't get a chance to and thank you again for the DVD. I didn't get a chance to check out the special features, so I'm going to do that tonight.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you got to see it, and I'm glad that I was able to kind of push you to getting to see it, because again, it's a movie I've been watching since I was for 25 years. Like, I've seen it, I love it, it's great, and I hope people check it out. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Rabid Dog's House. What is your favorite 90s psychological thriller? Have you seen Copycat? Are you a fan? Are you a fan of Sigourney Weaver, Holly Hunter movies? Thank you, Zena Dixon, for joining me tonight. You can find Zena over at realqueenofhorror.com, on YouTube under her Real Queen of Horror moniker, or over at Wicked Horror. And I'm Justin Steele. You can find me also at Wicked Horror, 411 Pop Culture, or on Twitter at Wicked Horror Justin. Thank you, Zena, for watching Copycat and joining me to talk about it tonight on this episode.
Thank you so much. I had such a good time.
Me too. And we'll see y'all soon. Have a good one.